On the morning of December 29, 2009, in Urumqi, Xinjiang, China, an ordinary day would turn into a moment that changed one life forever. He arrived full of hope and ambition, carrying dreams that seemed within reach, yet unaware of the danger lurking in unfamiliar streets. The city, bustling and foreign, became the stage for a series of choices that would spiral out of control. Friends who seemed trustworthy offered guidance, but behind their words lay deception and hidden motives. At the same time, his fragile mental state made navigating this new environment even more precarious. One wrong decision, one misstep in a system he did not fully understand, set events into motion that would eventually lead to his arrest. The clash between personal ambition, naivety, and an unforgiving legal environment began here, in the heart of Xinjiang. By the time the first warning signs appeared, the trajectory toward tragedy had already been set. Born on April 5, 1956, in Pakistan, he grew up in a family that valued hard work and ambition. From an early age, he displayed a curious mind and a determination to make something of himself. His childhood was a mix of strict upbringing and small joys, with moments that hinted at both his charm and a streak of impulsiveness that would shape his future. In his teenage years, his family decided to migrate to the United Kingdom, hoping for better opportunities. The move promised a fresh start, but adjusting to a new culture and environment was challenging. He quickly learned that ambition alone was not enough. Survival required cunning, adaptability, and sometimes taking risks others might shy away from. As a young adult, he pursued multiple careers. He tried his hand as an estate agent, hoping to carve out a respectable position. Later, he ventured into the minicab business, driven by the promise of independence and financial growth. Each venture showed his resourcefulness, yet also revealed a tendency to make hasty decisions without fully considering consequences. Financial setbacks followed, and bankruptcy eventually marked his early professional life. Despite these failures, he maintained a charismatic persona. People were drawn to his energy, optimism, and persuasive nature. Friends and acquaintances often noted his ability to dream big, sometimes to the point of recklessness. His personal life mirrored his professional journey. His first marriage ended amid struggles and disagreements, reflecting his complex personality. Relationships were never simple for him. He could be loving and devoted, yet impulsive and unpredictable. These traits, combined with a deep desire for success and recognition, would later make him particularly vulnerable to schemes and deception. Ambition pushed him toward opportunities abroad, even when caution would have advised restraint. His early years, filled with both promise and missteps, laid the foundation for the choices that would define the next chapters of his life. In understanding these beginnings, we can see how charm, ambition, and erratic decision-making intersected, creating a path that would ultimately lead him into circumstances far beyond his control. By 2005, his life had taken another turn. After his first marriage ended, he married a Polish secretary and soon welcomed a child into the world. Hoping for stability and a fresh start, he relocated to Poland, carrying dreams that were both ambitious and unusual. He imagined starting his own airline, a bold vision that reflected his larger-than-life aspirations. At the same time, he nurtured another, more personal dream: pop stardom. Music became a private escape, a space where he could imagine fame and recognition that had always eluded him. Yet, the reality of life in Poland was far from glamorous. Financial struggles weighed heavily on him. Income was inconsistent, and he often scraped by, navigating a marginal existence that contrasted sharply with his lofty ambitions. During this period, he met Gareth Saunders, a figure who would later play a pivotal role in his life. Saunders introduced him to new ideas and contacts, but also exposed him to situations that demanded caution and judgment, qualities he sometimes struggled to exercise. His behavior became increasingly erratic. He wrote songs with intense enthusiasm, even recording them at home, as if each melody could transform his life overnight. At the same time, He sent texts and messages hinting at political intrigue and terrorism, blurring the lines between fantasy and reality. Friends and acquaintances noted that his charm remained intact, but it was mixed with a vulnerability and impulsiveness that left him open to manipulation. These years in Poland highlighted the contrast between ambition and reality. While he reached for dreams that seemed impossible, his financial instability and unpredictable behavior created openings for others to influence him. The combination of creativity, charm, and erratic decision-making made him an easy target for schemes he did not fully understand. As he navigated the challenges of raising a family, pursuing improbable dreams, and surviving day-to-day struggles, the stage was quietly set for events that would soon spiral beyond his control. His life in Poland was a mixture of hope, delusion, and peril, a prelude to the fateful choices that lay ahead. In the summer of 2009, a new chapter began, one that would change the course of his life forever. It started with two men, known only as Carlos and Okole, who entered his life promising opportunity and excitement. They spoke of fame, wealth, and adventure in a way that made his dreams of recognition feel within reach. Their plan seemed straightforward, yet it was far from harmless. The journey began in Poland and quickly moved eastward through Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, a path that mirrored the growing tension within him. Along the way, they carried a small suitcase, which they claimed contained something crucial for his ambitions. He accepted their guidance, driven by ambition, naivety, and a fragile grasp on reality. His mental instability made him vulnerable to persuasion, and he failed to question the risks of their plan. Suspicion, doubt, and fear lingered in the background, yet he convinced himself this was his chance to achieve the extraordinary. With each border crossed, the stakes grew higher, and the weight of what he was carrying increased, though he remained unaware of the full danger. Every interaction with Carlos and Okole pushed him further into uncertainty, blurring the line between opportunity and peril. By the time they reached China, the tension had built to a nearly unbearable level. The promise of fame and fortune loomed large, but so did the shadow of consequences he could not yet imagine. His mind, already fragile, struggled to reconcile ambition with reality. He was on a path that would lead not to triumph, but to tragedy. Every decision, every step eastward, carried him closer to an arrest that would shock his family, his home country, and the world. The stage was set for a confrontation with fate that would leave no room for error, no chance to turn back. On 12th September 2007, at Urumqi Airport in China, his journey took a devastating turn. Officials discovered 4 kilograms of heroin in the suitcase he had been carrying. Shock rippled through him. He insisted he had no knowledge of the contents, and his confusion and panic were evident. For a man already battling mental instability, this moment was nothing short of catastrophic. Despite his claims, he cooperated fully with the authorities, answering questions and explaining his involvement as best he could. Legal arguments were quickly set into motion. His defense leaned heavily on ignorance, emphasizing his lack of criminal history and mental vulnerability. Yet the evidence was overwhelming, leaving little room for doubt in the eyes of the prosecution. Every step of the investigation painted a clear picture of the crime, making it difficult for his claims to gain traction. The tension grew as the court prepared to weigh his mental health struggles against the severity of the offense. Requests for a formal mental health assessment were denied. Officials cited procedural rules, leaving him without professional evaluation or expert testimony. The courtroom drama highlighted not only his personal plight, but also the rigid structure of the Chinese legal system. Observers noted the strict adherence to established procedures, a stark contrast to what he might have expected back home. Throughout the trial, historical echoes lingered in the background. References to the Opium Wars reminded all involved of China's long and painful history with drugs, a legacy that still shaped public sentiment and legal attitudes. The weight of this history compounded the personal tragedy, creating a sense of inevitability as the proceedings unfolded. His fate seemed increasingly uncertain, caught between the law, cultural memory, and his own fragile mental state. The stage was set for a verdict that would test the limits of justice, mercy, and human resilience. After the initial trial, the situation escalated into a tense battle between law, diplomacy, and human compassion. The Chinese Supreme Court confirmed the death sentence, and with it came a shocking refusal. No psychiatric evaluation would be allowed. Experts had repeatedly argued that his mental health issues made him vulnerable and impaired his judgment. Yet these pleas fell on deaf ears. For Shaikh, the stakes had never been higher, and the human tragedy became starkly visible. The British government mounted a relentless series of appeals. Over 27 official representations were made, urging reconsideration, highlighting his fragile mental state, and asking for clemency. Diplomats emphasized his lack of criminal history in the UK and questioned whether the punishment was proportionate to his understanding of the crime. Despite these efforts, responses were formal, restrained, and unwavering. International organizations joined the fight. Reprieve and Amnesty International campaigned vigorously, issuing statements, petitions, and calls for intervention. The United Nations engaged diplomatically, stressing human rights concerns and the importance of mental health considerations in capital cases. Each statement amplified the global awareness of the case, adding layers of pressure on a legal system balancing sovereignty with international scrutiny. Amid these formal interventions, the emotional voice of family and community grew louder. Relatives, friends, and advocates pleaded in the media for mercy, describing a man they knew as flawed but fundamentally incapable of deliberate criminal intent. Headlines and interviews conveyed desperation, confusion, and heartbreak. Across continents, viewers, readers, and diplomats wrestled with the question: how could justice and compassion coexist in a case so fraught with tragedy, deception, and international tension? The weight of this conflict was immense. On one side, the Chinese legal system adhered strictly to its code, mindful of public perception, historical sensitivity, and national sovereignty. On the other, global opinion, human rights advocacy, and family appeals demanded recognition of mental health, intent, and proportionality. For Shaikh, the clash was intensely personal, a life hanging in the balance while nations, organizations, and citizens debated principles far beyond his control. The case became more than an individual story. It embodied the tension between law and humanity, punishment and understanding, sovereignty and international responsibility. As days passed, the public attention did not wane. Media coverage in Britain and beyond framed the narrative around injustice, mental health, and the broader implications for foreign nationals facing harsh legal systems abroad. Each article, statement, and campaign deepened the emotional resonance, making it impossible to ignore the human cost. The question lingered: could international pressure, advocacy, and moral argument alter a legal path so firmly determined, or was Shaikh's fate sealed by circumstances beyond his understanding? The final chapter arrived on 29th December 2009. In Urumqi, Xinjiang, the sentence was carried out with precision. Lethal injection ended his life. The moment was swift, official, and final. Family members, desperate to be present, were denied access. Their pleas, their heartbreak, remained unheard behind the walls of the Chinese prison system. The man they knew, flawed, troubled, yet human, was gone. In accordance with his faith, a Muslim burial was arranged, honoring religious rites even amid a strictly controlled environment. This small concession offered a measure of dignity, but it could not ease the sorrow of a family left to grieve from a distance. Across continents, the news spread quickly, sending shockwaves through communities, media outlets, and diplomatic channels. Headlines highlighted not just the act itself, but the broader implications. A European citizen executed far from home. Under laws many struggled to reconcile with international expectations. The historical significance of this event was profound. Shaikh became the first European Union national executed in China in decades, a reminder of the stark contrast between legal systems and the heavy hand of justice as it is interpreted abroad. For the public, the case provoked debate, outrage, and sorrow. It was a story of ambition undone, of human vulnerability exposed, and of the tension between sovereignty, justice, and the moral responsibility that crosses borders. The execution closed a chapter in one man's life, but the echoes of his story continued to resonate, raising questions about law, mercy, and the tragic consequences of choices made under extraordinary pressure. The aftermath of the execution rippled far beyond the walls of the prison. In the United Kingdom, the reaction was intense and divided. Politicians debated the balance between upholding international law and protecting a citizen abroad. Public opinion split sharply. Some argued that the sentence was an inevitable consequence of Shaikh's actions, while others condemned it as a shocking miscarriage of justice, particularly given his documented mental health struggles. Families, human rights advocates, and ordinary citizens voiced disbelief, questioning how a British national could face the death penalty without a proper psychiatric evaluation. In China, officials maintained a firm stance. They cited the legal framework surrounding drug trafficking and emphasized the country's zero-tolerance policy. Statements highlighted the historical and cultural context, drawing connections to decades of struggles against narcotics, including the Opium Wars and the government's ongoing campaign to curb international drug networks. From Beijing's perspective, the execution was both a legal obligation and a warning to deter similar crimes. International media coverage was widespread and sharply critical. Outlets across Europe, North America, and Asia scrutinized the case, framing it as a clash between human rights and national sovereignty. Organizations like the United Nations and the European Union expressed concern over the fairness of the trial and the denial of psychiatric assessment. Reprieve and Amnesty International underscored the ethical dilemmas, emphasizing the treatment of mentally vulnerable individuals within legal systems that differ dramatically from Western norms. The debate also sparked broader discussions about mental health and justice. Could a person struggling with cognitive or emotional instability be fully accountable under such stringent laws? Diplomats considered the impact on bilateral relations, aware that the case had strained ties and provoked public outrage. For many, the story symbolized the tension between justice, mercy, and international diplomacy, raising questions about how countries balance legal sovereignty with humanitarian obligations. The execution and its aftermath left a lasting imprint, a stark reminder of the human cost when ambition, mental vulnerability, and global legal frameworks collide. The story of Shaikh's journey did not end with his execution. Its reverberations have been felt in legal circles, diplomatic corridors, and public consciousness across continents. In the United Kingdom, the case sparked ongoing debates about the rights and protections of citizens abroad, especially when they face legal systems that operate under vastly different rules. Politicians, diplomats, and legal experts have revisited the protocols for supporting nationals detained overseas, considering what safeguards can prevent similar tragedies. Shaikh's case exposed the fragile intersection between international law and national sovereignty, highlighting how cultural and legal differences can collide with devastating human consequences. China, meanwhile, continued to assert its zero-tolerance stance on drug trafficking. For Chinese authorities, the case underscored the seriousness of their drug laws and the historical struggle against narcotics, from the Opium Wars to modern-day smuggling networks. The execution of a European national, while legally justified under Chinese law, sent a stark message about enforcement, deterrence, and the reach of the country's judicial system. This combination of legal rigor and historical framing reinforced the government's broader narrative of sovereignty and the rule of law. The tragedy also left a profound impact on discussions around mental health and criminal responsibility. Sheikh's documented psychological struggles raised difficult questions. To what extent should mental health be considered when evaluating culpability, especially in international contexts where assessments and protections vary widely? His inability to access proper psychiatric evaluation became a focal point for advocates calling for more humane treatment of vulnerable individuals within high-stakes legal proceedings. Organizations like Amnesty International and Reprieve have continued to reference his story in campaigns for systemic reforms, emphasizing that justice is incomplete if it fails to account for human vulnerability. At its core, Sheikh's story is a human tragedy. It is a reminder of how ambition, erratic decision-making, and manipulation can intersect with unforgiving legal frameworks to produce irreversible consequences. Families remain at the heart of this narrative. His loved ones confronted not only the loss of a son and husband, but also the stark reality of cross-border justice systems that offer little recourse. Media coverage and public debate ensured that his ordeal became more than a private sorrow. It became a symbol of the complexities and moral dilemmas inherent in international law, mental health considerations, and the global fight against drugs. From a moral perspective, the case forces reflection on the balance between deterrence and compassion. Laws exist to protect societies, but their enforcement can sometimes collide with fundamental human rights. Sheikh's vulnerability, his mental health struggles, and the absence of a fair psychiatric assessment expose systemic gaps that continue to provoke debate. How do countries reconcile strict legal codes with the moral obligation to protect those who may be ill-equipped to navigate them? His story remains a cautionary tale about the human cost of overlooking these nuances. Diplomatically, the case had a lasting effect on UK-China relations. While the two nations continued to engage in trade, cultural exchange, and dialogue, Sheikh's execution lingered as a point of tension. It highlighted the delicate interplay between respecting another country's legal sovereignty and advocating for the humane treatment of one's citizens abroad. Lessons from the ordeal have informed subsequent consular strategies, emphasizing the importance of early intervention, mental health support, and diplomatic engagement to prevent such tragedies. Ultimately, Sheikh's story is a testament to human vulnerability and the complexities of justice in a globalized world. It serves as a mirror reflecting systemic challenges, moral ambiguities, and the fragility of human life when ambition, manipulation, and international law intersect. While the legal outcome in China remained unaltered, the narrative sparked reflection worldwide on mental health, cross-border accountability, and the moral responsibilities of both governments and individuals. His life and death continue to resonate as a sobering reminder that justice is not only a matter of law, but also a profound moral and human consideration, urging societies to confront how they protect the vulnerable while upholding the rule of law.